press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Namaste children. So let us continue with the topic chemical coordination and integration. So we'll start with the testes. So it functions, it is having dual function. One is it acts as a male reproductive organ which helps in the production of male gamete, and also it helps in the secretion of hormone called testosterone. So it is a primary reproductive organ where it is a male reproductive organ which helps in the formation of male gametes, that is sperms. But also it releases a hormone called testosterone. So testis is having a two function. One is it is a male reproductive organ which helps in the formation of male gametes, that is sperms, and endocrine part of the testis, that is Leydig cells of the testis, produces a hormone called testosterone which is responsible for the appearance of male secondary sexual characters like deep voice, hair growth on the face and muscular body. So this we know that testes are present in a bag like structure called scrotum. Pair of testes are present so these are testes. Why they are present in a bag-like structure called scrotum? In man, testes are extra-abdominal. They are present outside the abdomen. To maintain the temperature of the testes 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius less than the body temperature, because that temperature favors the spermatogenesis. So testes are present in a bag-like structure called scrotum to maintain temperature of testes 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius less than the body temperature, because that helps in spermatogenesis, that helps in a process called spermatogenesis. What is spermatogenesis? Formation of sperm, formation of male gamete or formation of sperms in testes is called spermatogenesis. So testes, they are present in a bag-like structure called scrotum, mainly to maintain temperature of testes 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius less than the body temperature. They are extra-abdominal in man and it produces a hormone called testosterone. So when we take section of testes, we see two types of cells there. These are seminiferous tubules. These are seminiferous tubules where spermatogenesis will occur. Between the seminiferous tubules, we see a cells called Leydig cells. These Leydig cells produces a hormone called testosterone. So, between the seminiferous tubules, we see cells called Leydig cells, they are also called interstitial cells. They are also called interstitial cells because they are the cells present between the seminiferous tubules. Leydig cells or interstitial cells mainly produces a hormone called testosterone, which is responsible for spermatogenesis to occur in the testes, and also that hormone mainly responsible for the appearance of male secondary sexual characters like development of deep voice, hair growth on the face and muscular body. And this testosterone also helps in the development of vas deferens. See, this is the testis. It helps in the development of epididymis. This is epididymis that continues as vas deferens. So, like this, testosterone also helps in the development of male accessory organs. Male accessory organs like epididymis, vas deferens and seminal vesicles. This is about testis. So, testis is going to perform two functions. One is it is a male reproductive organ where the formation of male gamete occurs, that is formation of sperms are going to be seen, and it produces a hormone called testosterone by the Leydig cells. That testosterone is mainly responsible for appearance of male secondary sexual characters. Then we will move it ovaries. So, even ovary, it is a female reproductive organ where the formation of female gamete takes place. Which helps in the formation of female gametes, that is ovum. And also ovary produces two hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone. It produces two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. See, so here we see ovary. Both sides of the uterus we see ovary. So this one is ovary. When female attain menarche, with the influence of hormone that we already discussed, with the influence of hormone FSH in the ovary, primary follicles in the ovary, the primary follicles, this is primary follicle, will convert into mature Graafian follicle will convert into mature Graafian follicle. In the mature Graafian follicle, we see the female gamete called ovum. This ovum is surrounded by cells. So in detail you are going to study in your second PUC, and we see in the Graafian follicle the cells called Graafian cells, theca externa, theca interna. These Graafian cells will produce a hormone called estrogen. Graafian cells produces a hormone called estrogen. This estrogen is responsible for female secondary sexual characters. Estrogen, which is produced by the follicular cells, is responsible for female secondary sexual characters like development of high-pitched voice and broad hips, mammary gland. They are all due to the hormone called estrogen. They are developed due to a hormone called estrogen. And once the rupture of Graafian follicle takes place, so when it ruptures, it releases ovum. Ruptured Graafian follicle. When Graafian follicle ruptures, ovum will release to the fallopian tube of the uterus. Ruptured Graafian follicle will become corpus luteum. Ruptured Graafian follicles, that means after releasing ovum into the uterus, ruptured Graafian follicle will become corpus luteum that produces a hormone called progesterone. It produces a hormone called progesterone. Understood? So, estrogen is produced by follicular cells present in the secondary follicles, tertiary follicles and Graafian follicles. We see the estrogen hormone production by the tertiary and from the matured Graafian follicles. The cells present in the Graafian follicles mainly responsible for the production of hormone estrogen. Follicular cells produces a hormone called estrogen. This estrogen helps in the development of female secondary sexual characters, whereas progesterone is produced by ruptured Graafian follicle. That is, ruptured Graafian follicle is called as corpus luteum that produces a hormone called progesterone. The main function of progesterone is to maintain endometrium thickness. So, endometrium thickness is maintained by a hormone called progesterone. So, this endometrium thickness is maintained by a hormone called progesterone. Why the endometrium thickness has to be maintained? When the ovum is released into the fallopian tube, if she undergo coitus with her partner, if the ovum is fertilized, then it becomes zygote. After 7 to 14 days, the blastocyst, in the second year in human reproduction you are going to study in detail. So, the blastocyst mainly helps, blastocyst is going to implant in the endometrium of the uterus. Blastocyst will going to implant, fixes itself into the endometrium of the uterus for further development. That's why the endometrium thickness is very important. That thickness is maintained by hormone called progesterone. Thereby it maintains pregnancy. Endometrium thick illa antandre blastocyst will not adhere to the endometrium and abortions occurs, and that results in abortions. So, to continue pregnancy we need thick endometrium that is provided by a hormone called progesterone. Understood? That's why progesterone is also called pregnancy maintaining hormone. This is about ovaries. We see pair of ovaries on either side of the uterus, and it produces female gamete called ovum, and also it produces hormone called estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is produced by Graafian cells or follicular cells responsible for female secondary sexual characters, and progesterone is produced by corpus luteum that mainly helps in maintaining thickness of endometrium, that helps in the continuation of pregnancy. That's why it is also called pregnancy maintaining hormone. Next, we'll discuss hormones produced by kidney and heart, and some hormones produced by gastrointestinal tract. So, kidney produces a hormone called erythropoietin. Kidney produces a hormone called erythropoietin that helps in erythropoiesis, that is formation of RBC. Erythropoietin mainly helps in the formation of RBC. So, which cells produces erythropoietin means, so already you know in the excretory products kidney functionally. So, proximal convoluted tubule, distal. So, here we see the presence of cells called juxtaglomerular cells. We see a cells called these juxtaglomerular cells produces a hormone called erythropoietin that mainly helps in formation of RBCs, that is erythropoiesis. Then hormone produced by heart. See, when decrease in glomerular filtrate rate, when we see decrease in glomerular filtration which occurs here, when the pressure in the afferent artery decreases, filtration rate also decreases. That is called decrease in glomerular filtration rate. When there is decrease in filtration rate in the Bowman's capsule, so this produces, juxtaglomerular cells produces an enzyme called renin. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು enzyme ಇದೆ RENNIN. This is a renin enzyme which acts on milk protein called casein. Competitive spelling ನೋಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. double N. This enzyme acts on protein called casein, but here in the kidney it releases an enzyme called RENIN. This renin acts on, it converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. It converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, so which is a vasoconstrictor. See here, when there is decrease in glomerular filtration rate, when the filtration rate decreases, juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney produces enzyme renin. That renin converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, which is a powerful vasoconstrictor. When it constricts the blood vessels, filtration rate increases. When the blood vessels are constricted, the pressure increases in the artery, that increases filtration rate also. And that angiotensin 2, it constricts all the blood vessels in our body, so that time the blood entering into the heart also will be more. The force of the blood entering into the heart, that is right atrium which receives blood from the superior vena cava and from the inferior vena cava, as the blood vessels are constricted, blood entering into the right atrium, that forcefully the blood enters into the right atrium, so the pressure increases in the right atrium. So atrium, right atrium, this atrium produces a hormone called atrial natriuretic factor, ANF, which decreases blood pressure by vasodilation. See, this angiotensin 2 increases blood pressure. How it increases blood pressure? By constricting blood vessels. So illenagatte, when the blood vessels are constricted, here the blood entering into the heart also, the force, the blood which enters into the right atrium, the force of the blood increases. That force is responsible for the production of hormone called atrial natriuretic factor, ANF, which is a vasodilator. Angiotensin ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಬ್ಲಡ್ ವೆಸಲ್ಸ್ ನ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿರುತ್ತೆ, whereas ANF ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, it dilates, it expands the blood vessels. So when the blood vessels are dilated, automatically blood pressure is going to be decreased and normal state is going to be accompanied. That is about the hormone produced by heart. Understood? Hormone produced by heart is atrial natriuretic factor. Nodi, natriuretic factor ಯಾವಾಗ produce ಆಗುತ್ತೆ? When it is going to be produced to neutralize the effect produced by angiotensin 2, that is mainly when it is going to be released, when there is decrease in glomerular filtration rate. This is how the angiotensin 2 and ANF is going to perform their function. Understood? Next, we'll go with the hormones produced by gastrointestinal tract. Endocrine cells present in the gastrointestinal tract. So hormones produced, hormones of gastrointestinal tract. The endocrinal cells of gastrointestinal tract produces 4 peptide hormones. One is gastrin, another one is cholecystokinin, CCK, another one is secretin, so this gastrin hormone stimulates and it produces a hormone called, this gastrin hormone stimulates the production of HCl and pepsinogen. The gastrin hormone stimulates and helps in the production of HCl and pepsinogen. This cholecystokinin acts on both pancreas and gallbladder. So in the pancreas it stimulates the production of pancreatic enzymes. It helps in the production of enzymes. And in gallbladder it helps in the production of bile juice. Cholecystokinin acts on both pancreas and on gallbladder. When it acts on pancreas, it produces pancreatic enzymes, whereas when it acts on gallbladder, it produces bile juice. And secretin acts on pancreas and helps in the production of pancreatic enzymes. Secretin acts on exocrine part of pancreas. Endocrine part produces hormones like insulin, glucagon and somatostatin. Here the secretin acts on exocrine part of pancreas and helps in the production of pancreatic enzymes. And gastric inhibitory peptide inhibits the secretion of HCl. Inhibits the secretion of HCl, hydrochloric acid. So this is about the hormones released by gastrointestinal tract. Gastrin helps in the production of HCl and pepsinogen. Cholecystokinin CCK acts on both pancreas and gallbladder. On pancreas it stimulates and helps in the production of pancreatic enzymes. On the gallbladder it helps in the production of bile juice. Secretin acts on exocrine part of pancreas and helps in the production of pancreatic enzymes, whereas gastric inhibitory peptide acts on gastric cells and prevent the production of HCl. So each one is your competitive question. And secretin is the first hormone discovered. Other than endocrine glands, non-endocrine glands produces growth factors. Non-endocrine glands produces growth factors. Non-endocrine cells or glands produces growth factors that helps in growth of tissues and also in repair and regeneration of cells or tissues. Some of the growth factors are produced by non-endocrine glands or cells that mainly helps in growth of tissues and also in repair and regeneration of cells. Then we will go with the mechanism of hormone actions. Hormones bring their function by binding to receptors. So, there are two types of receptors: membrane bound receptors, another one is intracellular or nuclear receptors. So, hormones bring their function in their respective target organs by binding to receptors. They are nothing but proteins. Receptors are made up of proteins. By binding to a particular molecule or by binding to a particular protein or receptors, they bring their function in their respective target organs. So, there are two types of receptors: membrane bound receptors and intracellular receptors. So, membrane bound receptors antandre receptors are going to present on the cell membrane. Receptors are going to present in the cell membrane. So, this is cell membrane and this one is receptor. When the receptors are present on the surface of cell membrane, they are called membrane bound receptors, cell membrane bound receptors. When the receptors are present inside the cell, that is inside the nucleus, so this is the receptor, this is cell. So, this one is receptor. So, that type of receptors are called intracellular. That means the receptors are present inside the cell. They are also called nuclear receptors when the receptors are present inside the nucleus. That are the two types of receptors. One are membrane bound receptors, another one is intracellular receptors. Membrane bound receptors are seen in protein hormones. They are seen in protein hormones. Example, they are seen in protein hormones, whereas intracellular receptors are seen in steroid hormones. They are seen in steroid hormones. Understood? So, now we will discuss in detail about these mechanism of actions. So in the membrane bound receptors, we see this is receptor. This is hormone. Hormone FSH. And this one is receptor. This is membrane bound receptor. This is cell membrane. This ovary. When the hormone binds with a receptor molecule, that brings the response 1, they produces secondary messengers like cyclic AMP and calcium ions. They produces secondary, they are cyclic AMP and calcium are secondary messengers. They are secondary messengers. Understood? When hormones bind with the receptors present on the cell membrane, immediately after binding hormone to the receptors, we see the production of secondary messengers like cyclic AMP and calcium that brings biochemical response, that brings biochemical response, in turn that brings physiological response in a target organ. In turn it brings physiological response in a target organ like ovarian growth or tissue growth. Ovarian growth or tissue growth. That is how the hormones are going to function when they bind with the receptors present on the cell membrane. When the hormones binds with the receptors present on the cell membrane, we see the production of secondary messengers like cyclic AMP and calcium that brings biochemical response. In turn it brings physiological response that brings ovarian growth or tissue growth in the target organ. So next, in the intracellular receptors, so examples, steroid hormones, this is cell membrane, uterus, cell membrane of uterus, this one is nucleus. Inside the nucleus we see receptor. This is progesterone or estrogen. So that will enter into the cell. Here the hormone will come and bind to the receptors present inside the nucleus. So when it comes and bind with the receptor present inside the nucleus, we see it acts on genome, this is genome, it acts on genome. So DNA produces mRNA produces proteins, and that proteins will bring physiological function like tissue growth and differentiation, like growth and differentiation of an organ. Understood? See, in the steroid hormones, hormones will enter into the organ. The receptors are present inside the organ, that's why they are called intracellular receptors. When the receptors are present inside the nucleus, then we call it as nuclear receptors. When the hormone binds to the receptor, that hormone initiates the genome to produce mRNA by a process called transcription. DNA forms mRNA by a process called transcription. That means it is transferring message to mRNA. DNA is transferring message to mRNA by a process called transcription. And mRNA transfers message to proteins by a process called translation. And these proteins will bring physiological functions in the target organs like growth and differentiation of an organ. Growth and differentiation of an organ. In this way, the hormones, steroid hormones are going to function. Understood? So, protein hormones hormones will not enter into the target organs, whereas in steroid hormones, hormones will enter into the target organs. In protein hormones, receptors are going to present in the cell membrane, whereas in steroid hormones, receptors are going to present inside the cell. That's why it is called intracellular receptors. And in protein hormones, there is production of secondary messengers like cyclic AMP and calcium. Secondary messengers are absent in steroid hormones. Understood? Secondary messengers are present in protein hormones. They are absent in steroid hormones. And here the hormones will not act on genome, whereas steroid hormones will act on genome. By stimulating genome, it is going to bring the functions in a target organs, but in protein hormones, the hormones will not act on genome. That's the difference between the membrane bound receptors and also intracellular receptors. Mechanism of hormones functions, hormone actions or functions. Understood? See, membrane bound receptors the receptors are going to present on the cell membrane and the hormone will not enter into the target organ. They produces secondary messengers. That secondary messengers will bring physiological functions like growth and differentiation of our target organs. Intracellular receptors receptors are present inside the cell. That means hormone is going to enter into the target organ and it initiates or it stimulates the genome to produce mRNA. From the mRNA, they form proteins and these proteins are going to bring physiological function that helps in growth and differentiation of target organs or tissues. So, this completes chemical coordination and integration. Read your textbook line wise and each hormone's function, which endocrine gland is going to be produced and what is the particular function that hormone. That's all very important for your competitive exams. Thank you.